So last week, I talked to you about something that I talked to you about a lot, which is that I absolutely love making the weekly update. I loved it so much that I forgot that last week was the last Friday in November, so should have been my November update. However, there was basically a week left, so I feel like this week is a good week to do the November recap. Because I've got a whole more week's worth of reading and videos to discuss. So let's dive right into it with books. So in this video, we're going to be talking about what books that I read last month, what my favourite books were, what videos went up on the channel, the highest performing video, lowest performing video, best book, worst book, and then we're going to talk a little bit about things I have planned for next month. I'm not going to talk about the December TBR too much because you should have already seen it. I posted it last week on the channel. And we're also going to talk about what I'm reading currently. But let's get going. So, last month, the books that I read. So I actually read 10 books, one short story, and I got halfway through Curse of the Mistwraith. So that does sound like a lot. Normally when I come to this monthly update, I'm like, I read 4 books and I'm halfway through a 5th. But these were books by Brandon Sanderson, who reads in a very, very fast-paced, kind of bingeable sort of style. And several of the books were, I think all the books were under 450 pages. Most were under 400. 3 of them were novellas. But they were long novellas, but they were novellas. Well, they were called novellas. I think they were all technically novels because they're over 50,000 words. But they were all under 100,000. And again, they were really, really easy, bingeable reads. So this was an entire month where I just read Brandon Sanderson, pretty much, apart from Curse of the Mistwraith. So, I read Skyward, then the short story Defending Elysium, and Starsight, and all 3 of those books were 4 out of 5. So that was a pretty good start to the month. Then I read Sunreach, Redawn, and Cytonic, which were all 3 out of 5s, which it was a shame that I read those 3 in a row. I did enjoy them all, but I think they were all just a little bit lacking. Then Evershore, which was a 4 out of 5. Tress of the Emerald Sea, which I gave a 5 out of 5, and was actually completely unplanned. So I basically had time left over before Defiant came out, because Defiant came out on the 21st. And I was like, well, I might as well read some other stuff. And I had my physical copy of Tress of the Emerald Sea, and I was like, do you know what? I'll just read that. And then when I was in the library dropping off some books, I noticed that they had Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. So I was like, well, I might as well read that because I've already read another Sanderson Secret Project. And then I still had a day and a bit left to go before Defiant came out. So I decided to read The Sunlit Man. While I enjoyed The Sunlit Man the least of all of the 3, and Tress the most. Tress was a 5 out of 5. Yumi was a 4 out of 5. Sunlit Man was a 4 out of 5. Although Sunlit Man was almost a 3 out of 5. But I have to say, I think that a lot of that is due to the way that I read it, because I was under time pressure to finish it before I could start Defiant, because I don't really like reading 2 books at a time. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. And also, I was reading it on my Kindle, and I do prefer to read physically. I've recently picked up, and I've got all my notes on here. So I picked up the Kindle Scribe. You may have seen my YouTube short about it, which is Amazon's new Kindle that you write, or you can write on, but it's also kind of like the size of a hardback book. And as somebody who massively prefers hardbacks to paperbacks, I have come to the realization that maybe the Kindle Scribe will fix my mild dislike for reading on Kindle. So it's not that I don't like reading on Kindle at all, but it's probably my least favourite way to read. So like number 1 would be a hardback, number 2 would be a paperback, number 3 would be a Kindle. But if this big Kindle could be my way into being to reading more self-pub stuff, because it's all on Kindle Unlimited. And I've got a load of basically every book I have to read this month, except for Curse of the Mistwraith, I already own on Kindle or is on Kindle Unlimited. So I bought them in like cheap deals, or it's on Kindle Unlimited. So I was like, well, now's the time to try out Big Kindle, and I can return it if it doesn't work for me. But anyway, so Big Kindle. After I read The Sunlit Man, I read Defiant, which was a 5 out of 5. You've seen my review on this on the channel, and I might try and see if I can find somebody else who's read it, who has a booktube channel, to do a spoiler discussion for the whole Skyward series. But Defiant was my book of the month, so I enjoyed it more than all the other Sanderson stuff I read. I really enjoy finales, like epic battles, closing off storylines, incredible. That's like kind of my favourite thing in fantasy, and favourite thing in fiction really, is like a really good ending. And I thought Defiant was an excellent ending. I think Defiant's probably the best of the like 2 endings that I've read from Sanderson, endings of series, so of Mistborn Era 1 and Mistborn Era 2. So those 3 endings, including Defiant was definitely the best book of the 3. Lost Metal, I want to say Hero of Ages was the 3rd book in Mistborn Era 1, and Defiant was definitely the best closing book in a series. And I will absolutely, because I've got I love the series, love the characters, love the world, I will definitely pick up Skyward Legacy by Janci Patterson, because her final novella, Evershore, I feel like she really nailed it, and it was just as good as the mainline Brandon books. And in fact, I would say Evershore was better than Cytonic. Cytonic ended up being my least favourite book of the month. I really wavered here between Cytonic and Sunreach being my least favourite book of the month. The reason why I ended up going with Cytonic is Sunreach was Janci Patterson's first novella in the series, and I feel like I enjoyed the time in FM's head as like the novelty a little bit more than I enjoyed the new characters that we met in Cytonic. And I think it's quite funny, because if you read Defiant, the new characters you meet in Cytonic are barely in it. And I think it shows that even Brandon was like, oh, actually, these characters aren't as good as the characters I've already made and spent 3 books with. So let's just minimise those people. Like, there are characters that are major in Cytonic who are barely in Defiant. But anyway, I won't spoil who they are, because then you know they survived Cytonic, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, best book of the month was Defiant, and the worst book was Cytonic, which is very funny, them being book 3 and 4 of the same series. Let's talk a little bit about... the final book that I'm reading is Curse of the Mistwraith. So I actually have switched from this paperback version, which I do love an old paperback, but look how small this font is. I was really struggling with reading this paperback version. So I switched to the Kindle version when I got the Scribe, and I have to say, I'm finding it much easier to read on the Scribe, with the big font, big, much more readable. I'm reading it a lot quicker. So I think the first day I was reading Curse of Mistwraith, I only read like 30 pages in an hour, and that's much, much slower than my normal reading pace. I would say with something like a Sando, I can read like 150 pages in an hour, 100 pages in an hour. Something a bit more dense, you're probably looking at, 1 page a minute, so like 60 pages in an hour. And that's kind of where I'm at with the big Kindle version on the Scribe. I have to say, Curse of the Mistwraith hasn't 100% hooked me yet. I am enjoying it. Oh, there you go. Cover's changed. I am enjoying Curse of the Mistwraith. But I'm enjoying it almost more as an interesting challenge. I do really like the two central characters, but I keep feeling like I'm missing stuff. And I don't know if it's because it's so dense, I am missing stuff, and like I'm reading something and then it's not fully going in because the next thing that I'm reading is also, like quite densely written, and it's the old. I say old. It's a more older, more traditional style of writing than I'm used to. I think also, especially coming off the back of Brandon Sanderson, who is very simple and easy to read. And I've looked up more words in Curse of the Mistwraith than I have in all the reading I've done this year. I've looked up more words in Curse of the Mistwraith than every single other book put together. So, um, sometimes I read books and I think, is this actually for me? Is it like when I read The Three Body Problem? I remember reading it and going, I think this book is actually just too smart for me, and I'm not on the wavelength for this book. And I don't think that's the case with Curse of the Mistwraith. I think a lot of it is whiplash going from Sanderson to this much more dense, much more traditional fantasy prose style. But also, I watched Philip Chase's video about Curse of the Mistwraith, and Janny Wurts talked about how there is a turning point in every story in the book. So every story in her books. So, for example, Curse of the Mistwraith is also the whole of Act One or Arc One, sorry, of the War of Light and Shadow. So there is a 50%. There is a turn at 50%, which I'm literally I think I'm at 48%. So there's meant to be a turn at around the halfway point, she says, in all of her stories. So that's not just the story of this book, but it's also the story of the arc, which for this case is the same. The next books, I think there are 2 or 3. So there's a turn at the halfway point in that arc and also in each book. So I'm going to read all day today in my free time. So I should have 2 or 3 hours to read. I'm hoping to get way beyond that halfway point and see if it starts to hook me. Because my Kindle says I only have 13 hours left to read of reading, which is, that's doable in this weekend. My worry is that because this has been so dense and because it's dense, I've been reading it less. I've been reading it for less like concentrated focused periods. So normally I read basically I put my son to bed, or my wife does it, and then I read for either 2 solid hours or 3 to 4 if my wife puts him to bed and I get to start reading early. But I've not managed a single 4-hour reading session. I've been distracted, or because it's so dense I've taken breaks, and then those breaks have been oh, let me just look at this thing, and then it's been oh, it's 4 hours late, it's 2 hours later and I've not read anymore. So the Curse of the Mistwraith, I don't dislike it, but it's hard to read. And I'm hoping that, and I have to say, I did also find something similar with with Shadow of the Gods, the first Bloodsworn Saga book. So that wasn't hard to read, and the prose style was a little more accessible. But what I saw with that one was that it took me quite a long time to get interested and invested, to the 30 or 40% mark in that book. It took me well over 100 pages to get interested and invested, and that is a more modern prose style. So what I'm going to do with Curse of the Mistwraith is I will finish the whole book. If today I haven't shot past that, big halfway plot twist or turn or something, reveal, that is promised in the video, I think maybe I will put Curse of the Mistwraith down so that I can start Dragons of Deepwood Fen to be able to have a review ready, hopefully for around release day. And then after Dragons of Deepwood Fen, I'll pick Curse of the Mistwraith back up. So I had this thought that maybe I could spread Curse of the Mistwraith out through the month. But honestly, I'm completely open, and I would love this book. And the way that Philip talked about it in his video with Matt, which I referenced a few weeks ago, just made me think that this series is like everything that I want in fantasy. So all I need is to get over this hump and get into it, if that makes sense. So, because I feel like at the moment I'm kind of half in, half out due to how dense it is. I've talked about this for a really long time, but I would not warn anyone away from Curse of the Mistwraith. If you like classic traditional fantasy stuff, then I bet you will love it, because it's really well written. The characters are fantastic. The world building is really cool. The two central characters specifically I really love. So Lycia and Arathon. I like their powers. I like their personalities. And I like some of the stuff that the hints we've been given at the future. Very interesting. But yeah, hold on for the full review for this one. But we'll see. Next up, let's have a look. So we did. Let's talk about the channel. This month I made 23 videos. It's pretty cool. We've got 43 new subscribers, so that's more than one per video, which is really awesome. Thanks very much if you are a new subscriber. Please comment down below which video got you to subscribe. It'd be really cool to find that out. We also had 2,000 views this month on the channel, which is really awesome. I think last month we were struggling at around 1,000, and so I didn't even talk about it on the channel on the recap. But now we're at like 2,000. The most popular video of the month was picking a new web serial video. So in that video, I talked about Worm, and I talked about Wandering In, and I talked about another web serial that had caught my fancy called The Gods Are Bastards. The Wandering In did win my came top in my decision to read. But I have been talking in the comments of my Wandering In videos with a couple of people about Worm, and a couple of people have talked about how Worm is like this shorter piece, and you can read an arc and then do a discussion video. So that may be something I do in the future. I don't want to become a web serials channel, obviously. My primary love here with reading is big chunky big chunky hardback fantasy novels. But I have really enjoyed Wandering In, and I really, really enjoyed. I mean, I didn't talk about that in the books that I've read because I haven't finished it. But I think what I've read of Wandering In so far would be like mostly 3 and 4, mostly 4-star writing. Actually, I wouldn't even say there's any 3-star. So like, yeah, I'd say what I'm reading at the moment of The Wandering In is like a solid 4 stars. And I'm really looking forward to reading more of it. I've got to the point now where I finished reading Wandering In for the video, and I'm like, what if I made another video about The Wandering In this week and released it on the weekend? Because I'm loving The Wandering In so much and I want to read more of it, but I'm holding it off. Because what I had originally thought that I would do with Wandering In stuff is basically spend like 2 or 3 hours reading and then batch record videos. So I would read like, like a third of the first book and then batch record all the videos about it. But I don't want to not read it every week, so I'm now actually reading it and recording it on the same day and uploading it on the same day, which the only other time that I do that for my videos is for, ideally the only time I do that for those videos is for the weekly updates, which I record at the end of the week and then on Fridays and post them Friday afternoon. Wandering In, really loving it. I would imagine that The Wandering In is a reason that a lot of new people are subscribing to the channel. So thank you very much for that. If you're here for The Wandering In, please do try some of the other videos. I think that you'll enjoy them. Especially, I'm sure that there is stuff that will be good crossover with The Wandering Inn. I think Tress of the Emerald Sea would be an excellent crossover book for The Wandering Inn. The only caveat I would say is that it's probably a little more enjoyable if you've read more Cosmere books from Brandon Sanderson. So your mileage may vary, I guess, would be what I would say there. The least popular video for the month was Shock Horror, a book review. I know book reviews don't do particularly well, and I don't do book review videos for the performance on the channel, honestly. I do them because I want to talk to people about the books that I read. And Redawn by Janci, Patterson and Brandon Sanderson, that review for the novella was my least watched video. Hopefully, people will keep coming back to these videos as they read through the Skyward series. That's my hope, is that people will watch my reviews as they read the books. So that's kind of what I'm why I will continue to do video reviews as long as I am, as long as we're still discussing the books and stuff. I don't want to say I'll never stop doing them, but I have no intention to stop. So that's everything on the old notes. And in terms of next month on the channel, so next week, the Sunlit Man review is going out. Probably going to be my least popular review of all time, because I'm mildly negative on it. Not really. I have some criticism of it, which and then on Tuesday, you guys are going to get my whole series review for the Skyward series, where I talk about, favourites, least favourites, all that sort of stuff. Hopefully the least favourite book that I mentioned in that video matches up with the least favourite video the book that I have mentioned in this video. That'll be fun if it doesn't. But ignore that if it doesn't match up. You didn't see either of those. So we've got that. We have got Dragons of Deepwood Fen is going to be the first full review for December. Curse of the Mistwraith, as I said, if I can get hooked on it, I will finish it, and we will have a full review for that. And then the next thing to do will be to have the review for Dragons of Deepwood Fen. I have recorded a Tress of the Emerald Sea open spoiler discussion with two of my old podcast friends. So that is fully edited and ready to go. I have thumbnails, I have descriptions, but I don't have a day to slot it into yet. It may end up being Tuesday the 12th. But we'll see if there's nothing to fill that slot, because I do think I have a video planned. I don't have my YouTube videos scheduler open, which would have been sensible to do. I'm really looking forward to next month's reading. It's really varied. So where previous months I have kind of had a central theme. So in September we were just reading self-pub books, although that was quite a varied month. It's just reading self-pub books. In October we were just reading those Stephen King books. And then in November we were reading Sanderson books, although that wasn't the original plan. We were just going to read Sanderson Skyward books, but c'est la vie. But next month I've got a huge range of stuff. So mostly fantasy, but not 100% fantasy. And we will see how far we get in that TBR. Because it is ambitious at 7 books. 8 kind of, if you include one that I think will probably just move into January. I did reshuffle my schedule a little bit, which left room for an extra book in January, actually. So maybe that'll be then. It's mostly because I was going to read the Empire of the Vampire series 1 book per month, but the second Empire of the Vampire book comes out on February 29th, so there's no chance I'll be able to read that in February, so because it literally comes out on the last day in February. So I will probably just shove Empire of the Vampire from January to February and Empire of the Damned from February to March. It all makes sense when you see the schedule when we talk about the monthly TBRs. I don't want to reveal the monthly TBRs too much for future stuff, purely because if I... Say, for example, I get to the end of Curse of the Mistwraith and I just feel no urge to carry on with the series, then the 3 next books in the War of Light and Shadow will move off the TBR. So I don't want to share it in advance because it's full of sequels. So I don't know whether I'm going to want to take breaks. You know, I want my reading to be as fun and footloose and fancy free as possible. So we need to make sure that no reading slumps are happening. Anyway, I think that's pretty much everything that I want to talk about this week. If you've got any questions you wanted to ask about any of the books that I've read, anything coming up, any videos or booktube questions, if you just want to have a chat in the comments, absolutely. If you want to recommend books, please do. I'm still building my TBR. I have the next 3 months planned, but as I said, I definitely need backups, and I need to build the list going forward. So be really exciting to hear from you guys. I was thinking about maybe reading Red Rising next year, but I think that I'm going to wait until Red God, the final book, is announced, and then read the series 1 a month leading up to that. I have already read the first Red Rising book as well, but I will probably reread it because it's been a decade since I have. It's not been in my recent fantasy reading lifetime, if that makes sense. But yes, so like the video if you liked it, comment on this video to have a chat with me in the comments down below, and if you have any constructive criticism or any suggestions or any books you want to recommend, please do also put them in the comments below. I'd love to chat with you guys about books. I'm currently replying to every single comment, so if you want to have a chat with me, that's the best way to do it. Please subscribe to the channel to see the next books for reading if you want to see what I think about Curse of the Mistwraith when I finish it. If you want to see what I think about brand new release Dragons of Deepwood Fen, which I've got an advanced reader copy for. And if you want to chat about anything else that's coming up this month, I'd love to have you. And as always, I'll speak to you next week. Have a good weekend.